ish exploration of one fellow's translation of the Christian scriptures, one big idea at a time. I'm Brandon Rhodes, and across the internet from me is the translator himself, Brandon Johnson. Hey, Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
Happy Thursday to you on this recording date.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Happy Thursday.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
I am pretty excited about this episode. It's a weird word that's always confused me, and then made me a little uncomfortable, and then made me a lot uncomfortable, but working my way through what you've done with it here in the fourth gospel has me excited.
Good.
So, thank you for that. Thanks for making me less nauseous with the Bible. That's really, I think, what the subtitle of the show can be sometimes.
Yeah, is that the purpose of this
It's
whole
an
project?
anti-nausea medicine for the Bible.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is glory, glorify, worship, praise is sometimes how it's translated. They're all like three different Greek words that are related, and we're going to just bundle them all together and explore a few of the places we see it being particularly impactful to translate them better in the fourth gospel. So if you haven't had a chance to read Brandon's translation, for those of you watching, we're going to have it up on the screen in a minute. And for those of you, oh my lord, my brain just farted. And for those of you listening, this is an incredibly short one that we're just going to, no, that's from a previous episode. Wow, that's just what's happening today. I haven't even had caffeine. That might be the problem. So anyway, if you're listening, there's a link in the show notes to give it a read. I'm going to tell you the verses we're going to read here are 1:14, 8, 48 through 56, 12, 23 through 28, 7, 1 through 5, and 17, 20 through 26. It feels like a lot, but we're going to go through them pretty steadily and quickly, and you'll kind of get a pace of these big ideas. So I'll also have those in the show notes as well, so you don't have to rewind and listen to me yammering through all those. And as always, don't miss out on the footnotes. There's a lot of good explanations in there, not just for these words, but others. Let's go ahead, hit pause, and give it a read. We'll be here. Hey everybody, welcome back. Brandon, I want to just start off with what's your experience been like with this word glory or praise or worship? Very churchy words.
Yeah. Praise, glory. Those are the two that I see in other translations. And I don't know, the word isn't bad. I think even you and I were talking about it. It's actually probably the best word as far as like having the flexibility to carry all the different like dictionary definitions
like
at once.
Glory can do
glory,
that.
The word glory. Yeah. But it has become like a trigger word for specific, like really kind of particular branches of Christianity that make it all about how God is worthwhile and the rest of us are not. Or that it has something to do with being otherworldly, divine in a way that humanity is not. And it really just ends up being about separating.
Yeah.
Instead of what I think it's more about is creating connection, which we'll get into more how, but yeah, so this putting God in a pedestal in a way that makes God and Jesus just really distant, I think, and emphasizes the crappiness of the rest of us who can't possibly attain to that.
I really appreciate that way you said it. Glory and the tradition around it, both formal and folk traditions, seem to emphasize creating distance, not creating union. Even though, as we'll get into with some of these passages, connection, belonging, homecoming, and union are actually expressive of God's glory.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which is a strange twist. How
Right.
strongly
Right.
we've tried to use it to be like, God's glory is up here and I can't even reach it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's actually a down arrow, right?
Yeah. Or something like that.
Yeah. And then at another level, these words, they just have a certain churchianity kind of like it can be religious technical terms, but it's also
Mm-hmm.
so enmeshed in Christian discourse, like both like Protestant and Catholic and Orthodox all use it and have used it for so long that, or in English they have, um, that it's hard to have a fresh sense of what's actually going on here. Like it may well be the best dictionary word, but it may not be the best cultural
Mm-hmm.
word. Like the Queen's English is not the best English.
Mm-hmm.
So finding other phrases that explore what's going on here can be really helpful, especially with something like worship. What does worship even mean? Like I sing with my eyes squeezed hardest shut. Like what
Mm-hmm.
there's a sense in which I have a sense of what the word worship means, but it really has become that sort of semantic satiation where that word just has become a sound to me anyway. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love Yahweh, I love Jesus, I speak highly of them often. Sometimes I sing, but worship feels like a strange word.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be in part because it's such an emphasis on distance,
It
or
has come to be that. Yeah.
yeah, or even the it's almost like a profound insecurity on God's part. God needs to be worshiped. God needs to be told how great God is. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like an ego stroking insecure narcissist.
Yeah. I remember I had a friend in high school who was just genuinely confused. His he was a great guy, but had a bit of a braggy streak in him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in a kind of a moment of vulnerability, is like, why is it okay for God to like ask for this, to tell everyone that we're supposed to draw attention to all the good things
Yeah.
and be talking them up all the time, but we're not supposed to do that for ourselves. And like and then the fact that I was like, yeah, I can see how that would be confusing, and like just like validated like the weirdness of that difference for him. Um, he's like, you understand what I'm saying? I got the sense that he had like tried to communicate that before, but had always just been shot down. Of like, no, you're not supposed to, you
Yeah.
know. So we ended up having a really good conversation about it. But I think part of the confusion is that that's not what God's asking for either. The ego boost.
No,
Yeah.
like at all.
Right.
There is a like attuning to the divine that is just built into what it means to be human, but that's something that we need in some sense, being image bearers, being made in the image of God. It's not really
Mm-hmm.
something God wants relationship. God wants participation. God wants to take on flesh, our flesh, all flesh. But
Mm-hmm.
because God becomes what God loves.
Right.
But what God most wants is not like sing about how dope I am. Like we're not made to be God's like hype men.
Right.
The
Or
chief
hype women.
hype people who hype.
Right.
People who hype. Um, not all people. Uh,
Oh gosh.
yeah. Uh, oh, where was I?
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
I mean,
there's
there's there's a connection between all of this and like what we were talking about last week with the epiphany, the revealing that's not about uncovering, but about like shining light on something so that you can see it
Yes.
clearly. That theme and this is like there's often in the history of the church a connection of light with glory. Um, if the word Shekinah means anything to anyone, they might think of that like the glowing presence of God in the temple.
Yeah.
Shekinah doesn't appear in the Bible. It was not a thing until medieval Judaism, but that word specifically.
Yeah.
But there is that sense of it's something to see, and this it actually isn't one of the words that we're gonna spend a whole episode on, but there's like 5 different Greek words in John about seeing that all get translated as see or look.
Huh.
Um, it's just constant. And then you throw in words that end up getting translated hear and perceive. And there's this constant like attention to noticing
Yes.
um, throughout the whole book. And I think that's what this has to do too, is it's drawing attention to the goodness that's there to be seen, is
Mm-hmm.
what this word group has to do with.
Yes. Yeah. I want to acknowledge a couple points that I am aware of in church history, like certain phrases that use this word glory in a pretty important way. It's just worth acknowledging here. We can like dog ear this and just come back to these as we're throughout this conversation. The first is in the Reformed tradition, which is often sort of our foil on this show, but they say, uh, "What is the chief end of humanity? It's to glorify God and enjoy Him forever." So the chief end of like the word that we're getting at here is like core to what it means to be human in the magisterial traditions of Protestantism. Like it's really a big deal for them. And what that actually means, who the knows? Like, is it ego stroking? The way they talk about God, it often sure seems like it. Like the chief end of humanity is to like stroke God's ego. I hope not. It's a caricature, and not, to be fair, not all branches of Reformed theology even like have that sort of caricature at all. But that's where it's been. And then the other one is Saint Ignatius said, "The glory of God is a human fully alive," which I like a lot more than the Westminster one.
Yeah, yeah. Both of
And
those make me think of being the image of God, like this calling of all of humanity to reflect what God is like.
mm-hmm. Well, and that idea of reflecting is so like permeated into the way Judaism and early Christianity talked about how the God human relationship, even down to like King Herod when he comes strutting out onto his terrace, he's wearing a purely reflective suit. He's reflecting the radiance, right? It's a
Mm.
symbolic performance of it. The priests in the temple have their um, like stones built into the front of their tunic. The
Yeah.
inside of the temple is plated with gold, so it's reflecting brightly the glory of God. And so to be in a room with 360 light coming at you from the torches and all that, and then it's radiating off of you, and then Jesus at the transfiguration has his face was shining bright and all
Mm.
it's like there's clearly a core metaphor here of like to be human is to be shiny, ultimately is to some way like, and shiny means to reflect and bear the image of God. So I can see how there is this sort of triad between like light and glory and human destiny. It's like just below the
Yeah.
surface in the scriptures. um it doesn't mean that's how we have to talk about it, but there's my little digression.
Yeah, it's getting at a deeper truth. Whether we want to keep using the same images or not
Yeah.
is really not important, but the the truth that's underneath those images
Mm-hmm.
is something that we express in lots of different ways.
Yeah. Let's get into how the fourth gospel writer starts us off here in John
Yeah.
1:14, will you?
Yeah. Well, before I do that, I want to just mention
Yeah.
like which words we're looking for
Oh,
through
thank
all
you.
of these
Yes.
passages and the Greek. So we kind of looked for three Greek words that are all share the same linguistic root: doxa, dokeo, and doxazo. Um, love trying to pronounce these words that have to do with praise or drawing attention, right? And even the
Yes.
one in the middle, dakeo, has to do with thinking about something, which doesn't say really have to say anything about thinking it's good or bad. Just I think this thought is
Yes.
one of the ways it gets used. Um, having an opinion about something or supposing something, or it does get used with like esteeming highly, having a positive sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a sense of like fame or renown or a high reputation
Yes.
that goes with these words. And then the doxazo, that like giving glory, seeking glory for something, that praising something. Um, that's kind of this whole family of words here.
Hmm.
Um, so what I've done in most of these is changing it to praise or praiseworthiness to try to
Mm-hmm.
catch that kind of inherent quality to it. It ends up getting it's how it often gets used rather than like words of praise, but just like the quality of deserving praise. Which is where we get the word worship. Like I don't think it's this word gets translated as worship typically.
Right.
Um, and we've talked in other episodes in other seasons about how the word that does get translated as worship literally means bow down. And so I've translated it typically as either just bow down as a very literal
Mm-hmm.
or as submit, because that's what you're doing when you're bowing down to a king. You're submitting to their authority, to their power. Um, and this is worship, isn't that? Worship is declaring the worth of something. The worthship is literally where the English word comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that really gets at what doxe, doxazo, what what's involved there in this, what we typically do as glory. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in this one, the praiseworthiness or praise. It's interesting as you and I were preparing for this, looking at the NET's translation of all of these words, it would within like a verse back and forth, it would go back and forth with praise or glory, and kind of the pattern that I was noting that there was like if Jesus saying, I seek praise for myself, but I glorify God, if God glorifies me, but yeah, there's something, it seems like they're uncomfortable with talking about Jesus seeking his own glory,
Uh-huh.
even to say that he's not doing it. Uh, or if it's praise of someone else, then they use
Yeah.
praise but not
Yeah.
glorify. So they're just like this commitment to God is glorified, humans are praised. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's the same Greek word.
Fascinating. All right, let's read this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. So John 1:14. The conversation was embodied and set up a place to be present among us, and we saw its praiseworthiness. Praiseworthiness as one of a kind from the Father, filled with generosity and trustworthiness.
Hmm.
That has a different impact than we saw its glory. Glory as one of a kind from the Father.
Yeah, I get immediately what the sense of praiseworthiness is. Like that's a word that makes sense to me. Like, we saw like the conversation took on flesh, did the conversations thing among us, and it was worthy of praise. Like
Mhm.
the same kind of praise as the Father has, filled with generosity and trustworthiness. Like that makes sense to me. And we saw its glory. Glory is one of a kind from the. Maybe I just don't know what to do with that word anymore. It's just totally dead to me. So this just helps me make sense of it because right now
Mm.
it's like blue screen of death when I see the word glory often. It's
Yeah.
that or it has this like really mysterious kind of sparkly, smoky feel to it,
Mhm. It
which
feels weighty too, like kind of like walking into a museum or a cathedral or
yeah,
any of these like big impressive buildings, like a sense of like, oh, like that. It kind of feels like that to me. We saw
in
its glory.
weight is a good. I mean, I think C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The Weight of Glory.
I, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, like similar words here are like reverence or hallowing. Yeah, when you come to a particularly moving place of beauty or something whose architecture gives you a sense of scale towards your own smallness, right? That
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. There's a weight to it, but again, the word glory is just so mixed up with other things that
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so praiseworthiness like, then becomes, John 1 is this like prologue for the whole book of like, we haven't actually told you yet what we're talking about, but just know that like the rest of this book is explaining what we mean here.
sure, yeah, yeah,
And
you
so
will
the
see.
rest of the story is Jesus showing what it means to be praiseworthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, praiseworthiness is not something that we like look up to the sky for. Like, if you want to know the praiseworthiness of the divine, look to Jesus. It's the same kind of praiseworthiness. Like,
Right.
if you want to kiss the sky, better learn how to kneel, as some Irish poet sang in the 80s.
Yeah. Well, since that's pointing forward into the rest of the book, let's also move into the next part. So this
Oh
one's
boy.
a little bit longer. It shows up several times here, which is why we picked a little bit bigger chunk. Um, and this is one of the ones where in the NET they go back and forth between praise and glory and glorify, like just kind of like willy nilly, just like whatever seems right to them on a whim. Um, but I tried to be a little bit more consistent here, so we'll see. We'll see how it flows. So the religious leaders here are challenging Jesus. Aren't
Mm-hmm.
we right to say that you are a Samaritan and you have a demon? They answered. I don't have a demon, Jesus responded. However, I treat my father with respect, and you treat me with disrespect. I'm not looking for my own praise. There's one of them. There is one who looks for it and does the assessment. Truly, truly, I'm telling you, if anyone pays close attention to what I say, then they certainly won't see death indefinitely. That's when the Judeans told him, we know you have a demon. Abraham and the prophets died, and you're saying if anyone pays close attention to what I say, then they certainly won't taste death indefinitely? You're not more important than our father Abraham, who died, are you? And the prophets died. Who are you making yourself out to be? If I were to praise myself, Jesus answered, then my praise would mean nothing. My Father, about whom you say he is our God, is who praises me. You don't know him, but I know him. If I were to say that I don't know him, then I would be a liar like you. But I do know him, and I pay close attention to what he says. Your father Abraham celebrated because he would see my day, and he saw it and was overjoyed.
I think part of what helps me when I read this one is I I actually shift over from your translation and just try out the word hype.
Uh-huh.
Or like, if I were to hype myself, Jesus answered, then my hype would mean nothing. My Father, about whom you say he is God, is who hypes me.
Yeah. I think that works in this particular
In
instance
this case,
anyway.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
Like,
mean that.
the shit you've heard about me is true. The good one, the good shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a
Like my,
sense of like celebrity to it,
mm-hmm.
in the sense of a not a person who is a celebrity, but someone who has celebrity, who receives celebration
Yes.
of who they are, fame,
Mm-hmm.
hype, a high reputation. Um, and as we see it, Jesus finds glory, finds hype in different ways. You know, a pretty common idea is to like find glory in battle. Soldiers go off to war, and I think luckily our culture is changing to talk less like that than it used to.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a pretty standard like I get glory through succeeding in violence.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wars not make one
and
great.
we see Jesus doing exactly the opposite of turning what it means to seek glory, to have glory, to receive glory, to be the exact opposite of what everyone else expects to be the road toward that end.
Yeah. The centurion model is not what gives you glory. That's not the kind of glory or hype or renown or revering that the uh, the God of the Hebrews is about.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and here I almost feel for the authorities, the Judean authorities here, because they're
Mm-hmm.
right. If someone's up there just saying, I'm not sexist, I'm the least sexist person. There's no one less sexist than I
Hypothetically.
am.
Hypothetically,
Uh,
yes.
it's kind of like, huh, I kind of feel like maybe you're sexist. The fact that you had to say that, like anyone who's up there like pumping themselves up, promoting
Yes.
themselves in that way, it's like
Yeah.
it's off-putting, and it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it kind of seems like that's how they're experiencing Jesus here. And he's like, "No, you're misunderstanding me. I'm not trying to get you to
Mm-hmm.
think how awesome I am and to praise me and stroke my ego. I'm trying to get you to see what God is really like because I understand him in a way that you don't."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a dissonance when somebody is like, I'm so amazing, and they like are flexing in sort of like a machismo, like kind of Drax kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
At least like there's an association, however wrong it might be or out of focus. You go, oh, okay, I can kind of see that. But when it's like he's just a scrappy carpenter saying these things, it's like, well, yeah, that's precisely the scandal of the incarnation of the Christ story, is that the hype of God, the renown of God, the praiseworthiness of God is not in um, the hunter with his big bow. It's not in the soldier with their big sword or gun. It is not in Caesar with his, you know, mythology and power. It's a human, fully alive, reflecting the image of a meek but tenacious God. Like the God's glory is not um, garish
Right.
or mingled with ego.
Yeah, has to do with being cruciform, being what we see in Christ crucified.
Yeah, which we get to next
Yeah.
thematically.
So in John 12 here, and we have a couple of sections from this chapter, in verse 23 through 28, Jesus replied, "The time has come for the Son of Man." Wait a minute. Which version is this? I don't
Did
ever
you paste
translate it
it
as
from
Son
the
of
other one?
Man.
What do you go?
Okay,
What you
let
were going to
me see if
do
I can.
quickly?
Yes, yes. Okay, so that was a big clue to me because I always do Son of Humanity. So I think I
Hmm.
accidentally pasted a different translation in here rather than my own. I'll find it. I
We
have
could
it
hear
at
the
hand.
terror in your voice there.
It's like, what did I just say? Okay. Those of you watching are going to get to see a little bit of how the sausage is made.
Hmm.
Get rid of these things that are making Word mad at me. There, distracting little underlines there.
And get rid of one, another one pops up. Jeez.
Why? Why? Okay. There. Let's try this again.
All right.
John 12, starting at verse 23. The time has come for the Son of Humanity to be publicly endorsed rather than glorified or praised. So that's how I did it this time. Jesus responded, "Truly, truly, I'm telling you, if a kernel of wheat that fell to the ground dies, it stays alone. Yet if it dies, it produces much crop. Whoever is attached to their very being ruins it, and whoever hates their very being within this world system protects it for age-long life. If someone intends to serve me, they must follow me. And where I am, my servant will be there too. If anyone assists me, the Father will affirm their value."
Hmm.
That's another one of the examples of how I translated it.
Glorify
Affirm
them.
their value, glorify them. Yeah. Now my very being is agitated, but what should I say? Father, rescue me from this hour? Just the opposite. This hour is why I came. Father, show your name to be praiseworthy, or traditionally glorify your name. Then a voice came from the heavens. I am showing it to be praiseworthy and will show it to be praiseworthy.
Word of the Lord.
Speak again.
Yeah, you've got quite a few different ways of translating it here. Publicly endorsed, show it to be praiseworthy, affirm their value. I like that one.
Yeah, it gets at that sense of the worthship and
Hmm.
the the publicly endorsed, getting at the hype sense again.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's less about isn't it awesome? It's more like it's more about like this is who God
Hmm.
is saying you should pay attention to. It has my endorsement.
Yeah. Yeah. Tune your instruments to this.
Let's look at the end of the chapter here. That same chapter, it
Yeah.
quotes. There's a quote from Isaiah and that this follows, and then it says, "Isaiah said these things because he saw Christ's." Oh man, I think I did it again on this one. Okay. Um, it's like I don't use the word glory.
That's the whole reason we're here.
All right, this one is easier to fix. Okay, Isaiah said these things because he understood his praiseworthiness. Nevertheless, even many of the leaders trusted him, but because of the Pharisees, they were not acknowledging him, so they wouldn't be expelled from the synagogue. You see, they loved praise from people more than praise from God. And that's one of those ones where NET does praise there,
Yeah.
even though it's the same word as glory.
Yeah, and a
Um,
lot of other translations do glory there. Um,
yeah.
yeah, that it this one doesn't really have any like big pop to it. It just makes basic sense.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
makes it
And
more
that really is the
readable and
point of it. I'm
coherent.
trying to make it clear what it's getting at.
Yeah, yeah. I
Not
want to.
necessarily even correcting, but just clarifying.
Yeah, yeah. To go back up to that previous one, it's worth acknowledging here that in verse 23, the time has come for the Son of Humanity to be publicly endorsed. Jesus says, "This is him talking about his crucifixion, right?
Right.
And his
Yep.
passion." Um, this was a revelatory moment for me in seminary. Uh, we did a word study on doxa, on glory in the fourth gospel. And like, you want to understand what the glory of God is like, it looks like God's full solidarity with creation, with us, with humanity on the cross, particularly with solidarity with those who are our false need for violence murders and executes. The glory of God is found among the trespassers, not among the crucifiers, right?
Right.
It's it's a tremendously offensive
Yeah.
idea. Like, no wonder the empire kept killing Christians. Uh, but if you want to understand like what is God's praiseworthiness, the cross is not an exemption to it. Like God's
Oh.
glory, the crucifixion is not an exception to God's glory. It is the fullest singing of it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Any
Jesus'
vision of
whole life was that, and pointing to God, and let me show you with my
mm-hmm,
own actions what I'm talking about. And it just came to that head of like, okay, people really don't want to hear what I have to say about who God is, and they're going to unleash their wrath on me. And I'm going to give my most effective point yet on showing it
yes,
by accepting that and being willing to die.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. I think that if you want to let
Yeah, I'll
your faith
share
your faith
again.
in your paradigm be find liberation and healing, I don't know if you can do much better than finding uh, uh, this shift. Like, really center yourself on that John 12 idea. Okay, we're down to John 17. Is that's
Yeah,
the
it's the last
upper
chapter, the
room
last two
conversation?
sections here.
He's like staying up late, drinking and eating with his pals one last
Yeah,
time.
it's this 4 chapter long monologue that
Mm-hmm.
he goes through, which is some of the most amazing stuff that he has to say. But
Oh man, yeah.
yeah, and so this is toward the end of that. This is the fourth of the 4 chapter long monologue. So Jesus talked about these things, and after looking up to the heavens, he said, Father, the time has come. Make the praiseworthiness of your Son known, so the Son would make your praiseworthiness known. Just like you gave him responsibility for all the family, so that he would give age long life to everyone you have given him. And this is age long life, that they would know you, the only trustworthy God, and the one you sent, Jesus Christ. I praised you on the land, completing the actions you have given for me to do. Now, Father, praise me with the praise which I began to have beside you before the existence of the world.
Where does this particular passage hum for you?
Yeah, the time has come to make the praiseworthiness of the Son known. And if Christ is the image of the invisible God that's how we know who it is, then that is also making God's praiseworthiness known.
Yeah.
And it's that sense of like that's what this is all about,
Yeah.
not stroking ego,
Mm-hmm.
but that people would know God and Jesus. And that like that's what the hype is about, not so much to like it's not a gimmick to get followers, to like Twitter followers or Instagram followers, and like
Yeah.
gain notoriety through just the fact that people know a lot of people know
It's not
me.
a marketing campaign.
Right. It's the sense of we're being shown and told about the high worth of the Father and the Son so that we can know them, so that
Mm.
we'll have enough, we'll be given reason to want to know them.
Mm-hmm. God, that's wonderful.
Anything else come to mind for you?
No, that's great.
Are you ready to go move on?
Let's move to John 17,
Yeah.
20 through 26.
Yeah. So sit later in the same chapter.
He's still talking.
I'm not, he's still talking. I'm not asking only on behalf of these ones, but also on behalf of those who have placed their trust in me because of their conversation, so that everyone would be one. Everyone would be one, just
Not
like you,
some.
Father. Mm-hmm. Just like you, Father, are connected with me, and I am connected with you, so that they can also be connected with us, so that the whole world would trust that you sent me. The praiseworthiness you gave me, I have given to them too, so that they would be one just like we are one. I am connected with them, and you are connected with me. So by the transitive property,
Yeah.
yeah, that's in there, right?
Yeah, I'm
Um,
pretty sure.
yeah. I am connected with them, and you are connected with me, so they can be completely made into one, so that the whole world would know that you sent me and that you loved them just like you loved me. Father, I want the ones you have given to me to be with me where I am, so that they can see my praiseworthiness, which you have given to me because you loved me before the conception of the whole world. Just, Father, the whole world hasn't come to know you, but I have known you, and these ones have come to know that you sent me. I made and will make your name known to them, so that the love with which you loved me may be among them, and I may be among them. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. And this section is just endlessly trippy and interesting.
Mm-hmm. I really feel like this is the payload of why any of the stuff that we've said matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The if Jesus reflects and bears the renown, the hype of God, what makes God worthy of paying any damn attention to?
Hmm.
Like, is not God's bigness, it's God's solidarity and love and um, relentless momentum towards union.
Mm-hmm.
That is what makes God worthy of praise and having glory. And that
Mm-hmm.
is extended into like those who participate in the Jesus way of being human. If you are figuring out how to bear the image of Jesus, you're learning how to bear the image of God, would be one way of describing what Christian discipleship is really all about. It's participating in the same kind of incarnation, and God in participating in the same kind of incarnation, however fractional, in us.
Yeah, so that the love with which you loved me may be among them, between them.
Yeah, yeah. And the experience of receiving love from others is receiving the love of God. I had a profound experience a couple of years ago, very vividly experiencing this, that when someone, even someone who I was in tension with for many years, would still love me and grieve for me and cherish me, that's God's love. It's, there is a sense in which we can experience God's love sort of interiorly and vertically, but the way Jesus, according to John, is talking about here is God's love is made manifest like horizontally. It pours down, and it's like something that pours into us and then through us, like simultaneously.
It's like a waterfall hitting the surface of the water, spreading outward and filling the pool up at the bottom.
Yeah. It's an audacious hunch to be pushing forward in the world, particularly in a world so bent on keeping, using divinity language, God talk, to reinforce power, distance, and hierarchy. This is a profoundly egalitarian thing. Like Dr. King said, you want to be great, you just got to serve. You don't need to know how to read. You don't need to learn how to build a bomb or a car. You just got to love. It's ludicrously empowering, if I will let it sink into me.
Yeah.
And it decenters me. Like everybody I meet, it's not just me walking around like I speak for God.
No.
It's like everyone is a vector for the divine. Insofar as they are attuned to the same kind of love revealed in Jesus on the cross.
Right. And when that's revealed, you can see the praiseworthiness that's there. And it centers on this verse for me: the praiseworthiness you gave me, I have given to them too. It's not something that only God gets, or even only Jesus. It's everybody.
Yeah.
When they start doing this love kind of thing, I've given to them too, so that they can feel awesome? No, so that they would be one, just like we are one.
Theosis, dude. I think that's a good spot to wrap. What do you think?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. There's a sense of awe.
Yeah,
settles
absolutely.
into me thinking through this stuff. It's not unlike walking into the cathedral and seeing the glory there.
There is a
praiseworthiness. Yeah, it's weighty.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for this chapter today, or this theme. The easiest way to support Fountain Translation is to leave us a rating or review on whatever app or website you are enjoying this on, especially Apple Podcasts. It makes it easier for more people to find the show and join the conversation, which you can even more easily do with that second best way to support the show, and that's becoming a sponsor for just $5 a month. When you do that, you get comment access on the Translations Google Doc and the satisfaction that you're supporting exceptionally nerdy independent media. You can find the link to join the community in the show notes. The music you're listening to is by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. Founding Translation was produced by Perry FM on unceded Chinook and Kalapuya land. Bye, Brandon.
Bye, Brandon.
Bye, everybody.